we're going to continue our webinar with VTS Denmark and our representatives from Ireland, who are both going to present their experiences with VTS. We'll start with VTS Denmark with Marie and Anna, so and who will be followed by Liz and Fred. So Marie, Anna, it's over to you.
Okay, I'll start telling you a little bit of the experiences that we have with VTS here in Denmark. Here in Denmark, the method is still quite new, but there's a growing interest both within the museum world and also in the pedagogical field, both at schools and also in daycare institutions. And in Denmark, we've used visual thinking strategies in many different contexts, and we will now show you 3 cases of how we used it. The first case is called Kunsten and Kindergartens, and in Danish it's Kunsten og Børnehaver. And together with the Modern Museum of Art called Kunsten in Aalborg, in Jutland, part of Denmark, we have used VTS as a communication method in connection with a partnership with kindergartens in Aalborg to make art a more natural part of children's everyday life. Excuse me, today. We did a VTS workshop with the early year educators from the participating kindergartens, together with some of the museum educators and museum artists from Kunsten at the beginning of the project. And we did that to ensure that they had kind of a common language that they used for talking about art with the children. And after the workshop, the museum educators and the early year educators used VTS themselves with the children, and the following year we did a follow-up workshop with them in VTS, where we also evaluated with them on how they used VTS in their daily practices. What we learned from the kindergarten educators was that they used and still use VTS as a natural part of their everyday life in the kindergarten. And they had made kind of a map of all the places with art in public spaces that they visited with the children and used VTS, both for looking at the art, but also just for looking at other things along the way, like life unfolding on town squares and nature scenes and so on. They also used VTS in connection with art projects with the children in the institutions and as a way to see and talk about the children's own drawings. And what they experienced when doing that was that very often the children had a lot to say about their own drawings when asked about what was going on in them. But also that the children often went away and continued working on their drawings afterwards. They could also use VTS for language stimulation in the kindergartens, for reading picture books and for handling conflict situations between the children. And also in Denmark, the early year educators have to document what they do with the children to present to the parents at the end of the day. And they often use pictures for this kind of documentation. And they have found that by placing the VTS questions next to these photos, the parents can ask the children, so what's going on in this picture, and engage kind of with their children about how their day was and what they've been doing in the day. Yeah, VTS serves as a method for the involved participants in a way that extends beyond the original project. And after the project ended, Kunsten, the art museum, decided to introduce VTS to all of the museum's educators and artists in order to use the method as part of the art team's communication kit. So yeah, it's a very interesting project. Anna, will you tell a little bit of case 2?
Just trying to unmute here as well as sharing screen. Well, the second case we wanted to share with you was a project we did as part of a larger project called Sense Language, or in Danish, Sense Sproget, where we used VTS as a method for language stimulation. And the project, it was a collaboration between speech educators, language stimulation teachers, early year educators, school teachers, and librarians and museum educators to investigate whether museums can help to support the language development of children who are in what we in Denmark call a special and focused area language-wise. and who need help to stimulate their verbal communication skills. And Marie and I, we were at the time working as museum educators at a cultural history museum, and were part of this project. And we had helped develop an experience for 3 to 5 year olds, where we wanted to make them feel or get to know ancient times in a very broad sense. So we gave the children who were part of this project a return ticket to play travel to the Stone Age. And it was very important it was a return ticket, because otherwise some of the children were afraid of being left behind in ancient times. So great emphasis on that. And then we took them back on this time travel through a dance labyrinth, and then they experienced what it was like to live in the Stone Ages. And as an add-on to this project, we developed this pre-time travel experience for the children who needed the special language support. And our focus on this pre-experience was to go from the concrete to the more abstract. And it is very abstract to go back in time and experience the Stone Ages. So what we did was we had this image of an everyday life scene in the Stone Ages. It's the one you see on the slide here. And then we invited the children to look at the image, and then before we said what's going on in this picture, we asked them what's going on in this picture, or what can you feel? And then we had fur and soft leather and things they could touch. Or what can you smell? And we had burnt wood. And what can you taste? And they tried mint tea. And what can you hear? And there was birds singing. That makes you see something in this picture. And then this sensory experience made them very curious about the image. And if they didn't have the words for what they wanted to say, they could point at the image, and then either we or one of the peers could help them with the language they were looking for. And it was a very wonderful conversation that developed through this very, moving from the very tangible to the more abstract, and hopefully, and that's what we experienced. It made it easier for the children as well to remember the new language they learned when they both felt and heard and tasted the words before they actually saw them in the image. And then having this experience before they went on the time travel to the Stone Ages also gave the children an advantage, and made them feel more confident with the other children to fully be in the experience. And then afterwards, Maria and I, we visited them again at their kindergarten, and then we did a proper VTS session with them using this image again, both to as a roundup of the experience, a follow-up, but also to assess whether it had helped them in any way language-wise. It was a very good experience. Marie?
Yes, the third case was a project that we called See, Sense, Speak and Shape. In Danish, it's Se, Sans, Snak og Skab. And the project that Anna just told you about with language stimulation inspired us to do a project for children who had come to Denmark as refugees. And with the project See, Sense, Speak and Shape, we wish to introduce children who had just arrived in Denmark to Danish as a language and as a culture also. We selected images that show different aspects of Danish culture that we thought might be of interest and value to make the children feel more at home in Denmark. We chose topics such as birthday parties and social gatherings and the 4 seasons, recycling, upcycling, and Christmas. And to introduce the topics, we showed the children an artwork by a Danish artist and used VTS to talk to them about what was going on in the image. Some of the children had only just arrived in Denmark and did not speak Danish yet, whilst others spoke Danish quite well. But by using VTS, the children could both speak verbally and use their body language to express an opinion or point out an area of interest to them in the artwork. And the children would help each other find the words to express ideas, which was really fine. The introductory VTS session weren't that long, but they helped create a safe space, and the image were a good way to place focus on a topic. We then proceeded with making the topic more tangible with a hands-on workshop where the children created their own pieces related to the topic. For the birthday image, they helped set a beautiful birthday table, and we talked about what each thing on the table was called in Danish, and that was really great because it was a good way to repeat a lot of words and having to place a lot of settings around the table with tableware, and of course they got to create their own typical Danish layered birthday cake as well, which is something we eat in Denmark at birthdays. So they could see what ingredients were in it, and also that it was safe to eat. For the recycling workshop, we talked about a piece of art made of garbage, and they created their own trash art. Oh, somebody's saying something? No, okay. After the creative part, we went back to the original piece of art, and then we did VTS. We did a VTS talk about it again as a roundup of the day. And it was really lovely, and it was really fun, and it was a really nice. It was nice to experience how VTS can be used to kind of create a safe atmosphere, and at the same time help children to express themselves and to learn how to decode what is going on around them. Yeah, so this was 3 cases told in a quick way. But if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks, Anna. Maybe we could save the questions until after Liz and Fred present their experiences. So Liz and Fred, it's over to you. Thanks very much, Marie. Thanks, Anna. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to try and share this slideshow. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, so as Sean has mentioned, I am based in Dublin City Council, which is a local authority, and Fred is based in the NCCA, which is a curriculum development agency. So I'm going to go very quickly through my few slides, and Fred will go a little bit more slowly through the curriculum side of things, because we thought there might be more people from teacher training and education in the group. So we've done our brief for the session, we've done our image discussion, and our case studies are the lab gallery and local schools, and then Fred will talk about curriculum development, and we'll briefly touch on Erasmus Plus as well. So we've done that one. So this is the lab gallery. It's based in the northeast inner city of Dublin. Hope some of you are going to get there someday. Basically, it is one of our programs. We have an arts office in the local authority. That's where I work. And one of our programs is the Lab Gallery, which supports emerging artists to make new work and to present new work for the public for the first time. And 5 years ago, we began to work on how we would think about how to connect with our local community in our local neighbourhood more deeply, and in particular with local children. And so VTS became one of the methodologies that we have been testing over roughly a 4 or 5 year period. This is myself and Sheena here in the park next to the Lab Gallery. Sheena is the curator of the Lab Gallery, so she's the person who works directly with the artists that present there. And this is Bridget Kildee, who's one of the classroom teachers that we began to work with first with VTS. Bridget was a teacher in the classroom, and she observed an art educator who was training in VTS come into her classroom, and then also would bring the students to the Lab Gallery. And now Bridget is trained coaching level and brings her students on a regular basis when she can. Sorry, I'm just going to go back there a little bit. This is Deirdre Gartland, who's the principal of Central Model School. So very early on, we set up a relationship with Central Model Senior School and with Deirdre about just having a formal partnership, a formal school that we could test VTS with, because we really didn't know how it was going to work. And we were very much learning by doing. And this is Claire Halpin, and she is one of our local artists in the community, but she also works with the teachers to help them think about the images that they may be using in their VTS sessions with the children in local schools. And we've now around 5 local schools connected into the lab gallery. So why did we use visual thinking strategies? We wanted a method that would allow each of the individuals' children's voices to be heard, and we wanted the experience to be enjoyable and social when looking at a work of art, because sometimes you would think that, you know, going to a local gallery or local museum, sometimes it's fun for children and sometimes it's not that fun. They don't think it's that fun. So we wanted it to be an enjoyable experience. We also wanted there to be a constructivist educational approach, because that would align with the lab gallery and how it supports artists to make work. It's very much you learn by doing and you reflect on that as you go along. And how did we do it? We trained with VTS in America, and we had accessed them in Amsterdam at first, and we've been developing opportunities to work with them and money to work with them ever since. We practice and we document and evaluate. And now I suppose really we have a growing community of practice, of people who are practicing VTS and who share practice with each other. We also managed through Dublin City Council, our role as the city, we managed to develop an Erasmus Plus project, and that's how some of these wonderful European connections have been able to grow and flourish, because we were able to access funding through the Erasmus Plus scheme. So what Permission to Wonder tested was, it really was extending what we were trying to do in our local community and connecting with other European partners who wanted to support children and young people to access critical thinking and thoughtful citizenship, to support children and young people to trust their own perceptions and to feel their observations are valued, and really to assist educators to access a new teaching methodology. So we invited VTS USA to train a number of educators from our 6 partners. And that I'll put the links for that project and for the lab gallery projects into the chat. Okay, Fred, I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, Liz, is it okay if you keep pressing the buttons?
Yeah, you just tell me.
Great. No, I love that. So yeah, I'm Fred Boss from National Council Curriculum Assessment. I'm an education officer there, and I work mainly in the visual art side of things, but we all do a lot more work across the organisation. We're a statutory body of the Department of Education, and we basically advise the Minister on curriculum and assessment from early childhood right the way to our senior cycle. So basically from 0 to 18 years old in the country. And we basically have 4 kind of pillars that we build all of our work on. So we invest heavily in research. We invest even much more heavily in consultations, because we always consult. We're a very consultative organisation. We're always going out and asking people how they feel about things, what do they think about things. And we use that as part of our research to gather evidence. We're a deliberative body in that we don't just think about things ourselves, but we also have structures that do a lot of thinking for us, and those structures represent a lot of different organisations around the country that also feed into the curriculum development work that we do. And we also rely very heavily on networks. So the fact that I met Liz and Sheena and we were talking about VTS 5 years ago was fantastic, because that's now a network that I can depend on, because there are even more people now involved, and even now yourselves in Malmo. It's very interesting that I'm able now to actually contact you and actually discuss things. So it's kind of building those networks that are extremely important. Can I have the next slide then? So the next slide is just showing the 3 main websites if you want to ever go and have a look at them. the main NCCA website where we do all our deliberative work and where we post all reports, that's there. The curriculum online hosts all the information on curriculum from 0 to 18 in the 4 main areas of early childhood: primary, junior cycle and senior cycle. Junior and senior being post-primary or upper secondary. And then ashtrashielta.ie, which houses all of the information on the kind of 0 to 6 age group. Can I get the next slide? So I started off in NCCA by working on writing a new curriculum for junior cycle, 12 to 15-year-olds in visual art. And what we developed there was different elements. And in developing those elements, it was around the same time that I met Liz. So I started to look at VTS, because one issue we always had was that art didn't really mean much to kids when they went to museums and when they had a look for an artist to support their own work. And even sometimes when they were looking at their own work, they didn't think deeply enough about it. And we needed a method for them to go in and actually think and talk about what it was. And VTS uses both cognitive and social domains. So when it comes to discussing the actual work itself, it's fantastic for that. So we're using it to develop critical and visual language in the students in the schools. We also use it when they're looking at visual culture and appreciation, in that they can begin to kind of look at works of art and actually think about them, rather than that's a nice picture and moving on to the next one, but they're actually discussing it and kind of having a relationship almost with the art itself, that they identify and critique the media used by artists and themselves as well, that they begin to understand art elements and design principles as they look at works of art or piece of design or sculpture or even the environment around them. And also when it comes to their own drawings, that they can do a critique in their classroom of their own stuff and their fellow students' work, and they can actually discuss it in a meaningful way, that they can get something from it to help improve their work. So that was all kind of built in there to that curriculum. If you want to move on to the next one. Now, this curriculum is as old as I am. So actually, I think it's actually slightly older and probably grayer than I am. This is the Leaving Cert Art History and Appreciation course, which is part of Leaving Cert Art for 16 to 18-year-olds in Ireland. And there are 3 main focus areas there: Irish art, European art, and general appreciation that students will study towards. And this is the written exam element, not the practical art exam. And for that, it was always very much rote learning off by facts in order to throw back onto the exam paper. What you're looking for there is a spark from a student where they've made a connection with an artwork. And we're finding one of the best ways to do this is actually discuss with them using VTS to build up that relationship with them. Do you want to go on to the next slide? So we've written the new Leaving Cert Art curriculum. And in that, there are 3 new strands called Create, Research, and Respond. And they work not just in the practical artwork side of things, but also in what we're calling visual studies, which used to be more or less the old art history approach to things. But in that, what we're trying to get the students to do is to, again, coming back to thinking and talking about art and artworks, and to look at them in a bit more meaningful way. So that's kind of a breakdown of the visual studies framework that we've developed, where they look at work that happened before a period of movement, that happens during it, and they'll focus in on those 6 main headings: context, artists and artworks, analysis, where they won't just use VTS to kind of begin to get to grips with a picture. I think this reflects back to some of the questions people were asking earlier on today, in that, you know, how would you use it deliberately in a classroom? It depends on your context, what you want to do. Are you introducing students to an artist or an artwork, or do you want them to get in depth? And do they need to know all the history behind it? And if they do, how do you build that in? So we use VTS to kind of help scaffold things around that. Have you got the next slide then? This is just to show you the kind of key competencies and key skills across the sectors, because we developed the learning outcomes with these in mind. Now, there are a lot of other elements as well that come into play, but I thought these might be the most interesting for you. And as you can see, if you can actually make them out, I think the slides might be available to you afterwards. But communication is very important across them all, from early childhood right to senior cycle. Communicating is right there across the whole lot of them. And in primary, it's called communication and using language. And that's very important. And that's part of the work of VTS as well, because the kids are talking, they're listening to each other. And that's how language develops as well. And also what we found is that in junior cycle, when teachers want the students to develop language based with an arts background, so it's technical language, they start to drop it in to some of the conversation, some of the discussion around artworks or the works that the students have done. And by reinforcing it, they can help develop and bring on the kids' abilities in that way. Just some of the other kind of key skills and competencies that are important is learning to be a learner, or else that's in primary. In junior cycle, it's managing information and thinking. And in senior cycle, it's critical and creative thinking. And that's kind of the cognitive domain where students are listening to each other, discussing works of art or discussing their own work, and they're learning from each other and they're taking on board what's being said. And then with the teacher kind of paraphrasing and repeating back and pointing towards what they're talking about, they can help to develop that language further. And also, it's a bit like our Danish colleagues were saying, they're seeing, they're smelling, they're touching, they're involved in the work a lot more. So it's making a hell of a lot more sense for them. Have you got the next slide there? So yeah, I think just to finish off, this was the Learning to Look CPD webinar series that we ran for teachers. I think nearly all our teachers in the country at the moment have at least experienced a session of visual thinking strategies as part of their CPD. So they've had at least an experience of how it can work. So what we did was we wanted to see how it would work online. This is what Liz was referring to earlier. So in that, we kind of opened it up that teachers would come along to one of the 5 one-hour sessions where we'd actually run the session and go through how VTS actually works with the curriculum and how they can use it, because some of them were doing blended learning and online learning as well as face-to-face learning due to the COVID crisis that happened since March. So we did 5 one-hour sessions over 5 weeks. We had 70 teachers turning up. What we also did though was we held a review session at the very end where we showed them new images, just to kind of get a bit of feedback from them. And we found the feedback in general was very positive. And that we just asked them, would they be interested in attending further training in VTS? We found out that a lot of them would, that they were extremely interested, that they found it kind of very supportive for the way they taught. I think that's about it, unless there are anything else. If you want to move on then to questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Liz. That was very interesting. So now I'm just going to open it out to questions and comments from the attendees. So yes, is it Nai or Nay?
Yeah, so as you mentioned before that it needs students to sense, see, sense, and speak. So I would like to know, do you have any suggestion how to apply VTS in the classroom, for example, for English as additional language, where the students have speaking anxiety? Thank you.
Who would like to take that between Anna, Marie, Liz, and Fred?
Yeah, I can try if I understand your question right, or else just correct me. Were you asking how to work with VTS in a class where some of the children has a speaking issue? Or what? Yeah. Okay. So what we did was using these elements to support the language, so that you could first touch something, and then afterwards we repeated the words. Like when we did, for example, the birthday table, we asked the children to first come up to us. And we did like this. Some of them didn't understand Danish at all. We did, use our body language all the time. And we asked them to take a tablecloth, for example, which is a fabric, and ask them to touch it, like to take it in their hands and put it on the table. And while doing that, we were saying the word tablecloth, or we're saying fabric. We asked, do you know what this is? And some of the children would maybe say, this is clothing, or fabric, or something. Some words that they already knew. We said that's correct. It is actually made out of fabric, and we call it a tablecloth here in Denmark. And we continue to say the same word again and again. And the same with a fork, eating. When they were eating with a fork, we said the word fork. It sounded really weird in our own head because we said it so many times, but we all did it together, so that it wasn't embarrassing or weird or anything. We made fun out of the words, but we continued to say the word again and again. And then when we did the VTS, we tried to include some of the words that we already presented to them, and the words that we already repeated. Does it give any meaning what I'm saying to you? Just to use elements, sensory elements, in a way to make the children feel the things while telling them what it's called, because then they can connect the sensory the sensory around the elements with the words, and in that way they maybe hopefully they remember it. You remember the word better than if you only get the words, but if you can see it, or if you can hear it, or if you can smell it or taste it even, maybe it will integrate in your body better. Yeah. Is that answer to your question?
Thank you, Marie. Nay, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Anna has her hand up. Do you want to chime in there, Anna, as well?
It was just if your students, I'm not sure if I heard correctly, if it was something about anxiety as well, if they're afraid to speak. What we have experienced with VTS as well is that a lot of the students, both children and adults, who normally hold back or are a bit passive in classroom situations, that they actually react really well with VTS, that it makes them relax, and that helps them participate more. So we've seen a lot of teachers are surprised when they use VTS, that some of the students who normally don't say anything, that they actually participate. So yeah, it's very good for that as well.
Thank you, Anna. Is that okay, Nay? Yeah, I can see you nodding, so I presume that's okay. I have a comment here from Satu, as well as a question. But first, with regard to the comment, she's referring to Fred's presentation, or part of the Irish presentation, which she describes as very interesting. And in Finland, you make the remark that VTS is the answer to our new national curriculum and teaching in visual arts, critical thinking, etc., which are written into the curriculum. But so far in Finland, you have not been able to introduce the method to the experts in teaching. So there is a lot to be done, since you are also a small group of VTS practitioners in the country. Thank you for that comment, Satu. Do you want to make a comment on that, Fred? No?
Yeah, sorry, I'll just take too long to press the mute button.
Not to worry.
No, I suppose I put a quick comment in there, quick reply to Satu again, just to say that VTS wasn't the only exclusive methodology that was brought in, but it was found to be popular because it answered a lot of things that teachers were looking for at the time. And it also, as a curriculum support, was very important because it also answered a lot of things that we wanted people to change their approach to looking at art and looking at the work they were doing with the kids and looking at the work the kids were doing as well. So it opened up a new way of having a conversation, because VTS is very neutral in its approach. There's no, you're doing that wrong, you're doing that extremely right, everyone have a look at this one, this is the way to do it. No, it's because the neutrality there means the kids can learn all along based on what it is that they're doing.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Liz has also in the chat function given a link or provided a link for the Dublin City Arts Office and the Lab VTS project for you to visit. Satu has another question for Anne and Marie this time, where she asks, did you cooperate with language teachers when working with children who knew very little Danish? So did you use some methods with regard to facilitating their language learning? I hope that is correct, Satu. Anna, Marie?
We did cooperate with the teachers, but we didn't cooperate around the language, so to speak. But what we did was that we asked them about some of the images that we chose for the sessions, because we were afraid of making some of the children scared, or because a lot of the children were traumatized because they're refugees. And we didn't know if we were choosing the right images, but we found out that we should not be that afraid of the images that we chose, because the teachers told us, let's just try, and we can always see if we should stop, during the VTS. So that's the kind of cooperation we did with the teachers. Anna, do you have any comment on that?
Yes, with very young children, we taught some early year educators VTS, and it was one of the first times we taught it. We had placed a course, posted up the course, and we'd invited early year educators for children from the age of 4 and onwards. And some of the early year educators hadn't seen that it was for when if they were working for children of the age of 4 and upwards. So a couple of them were working with children down to the age of 2-year-olds, and we were a bit unsure whether you could use VTS with this age group or not. But then the early year educators themselves, when they did VTS, they used the simplified sign language you use with children to complement what they were saying with their words, and that worked really, really well. So we were inspired by them in how you can approach VTS sessions for very young children, and it might be helpful in other situations as well. I don't know.
Thank you for that, Anna. Thank you so much, Liz, Fred, Marie, Anna, for your participation here today. It has been really fantastic, really, really, really interesting to listen and to your experiences with VTS in your respective jobs in Denmark and in Ireland. And I want to thank, of course, Chris and Circa for their help to organize this webinar. And I want to thank all of you, the attendees here today as well. Please be aware that we are going to upload this webinar to our YouTube channel, the link for which is in the chat here. And it will be there at the very latest on Monday. You will have the opportunity as well for a limited time to make comments and to ask questions as well on the YouTube channel. I think that's it.